What is up, people of the internet? Welcome to the YouTube version of quote tweeting. I'm your host, Ticking Time Bomb. Now, I love doing this series, but I want to make bigger and deeper content. No, that does not mean I'm going to be doing casting for Pornhub original content. But I will be taking longer to put out each video so I can put enough work and effort into it. I just can't take too much time away from my fatherly duties as well as my equally important husbandly duties, meaning trash, unfortunately. But I still get plenty of time to browse Twitter, so let's get into today's episode of... Wait, no, we already did that. We already rolled the intro. What are you doing?
You are losing. This is becoming a bigger mess than a trailer park after a tornado.
Wow, just went for a trailer park joke, huh? Really?
Don't you dare say Hollywood. Don't you dare.
Hollywood. So let's start off with a light one. A snack, an appetizer. The main course is going to suck. It's going to split people down the middle. Kind of more like a Trump speech, though, and not as much like a magician with a god complex. First of all, I want to clarify my stance on the KSI and Logan Paul fight the other day. I made some statements on Twitter that people seem to be taking differently than I'm actually meaning them. I don't believe that KSI and Logan Paul didn't fight each other. I believe they fought each other. But I believe that all of this stuff, the entire thing, was very overly fake. It was staged to the point that it's hard to believe that a draw was really the actual deserved result. I've seen a lot of people make compelling arguments disputing this, but at the time and still now, I have way too much doubt in my mind that the result is the real result, just because of how much they've done that's clearly manipulative to change the situation. And there was no actual boxing league associated with this from anything I could tell. Apparently the British Boxing Association or whatever apparently made a statement that they have nothing to do with this. So it's entirely possible that yes, it was rigged. They've all faked stuff like this in the past, but at a much smaller scale. So scaling it up like this when it worked at a smaller scale isn't surprising whatsoever. The fact the fight ended in a draw really just kind of adds to that suspicion. If you know you're going to have a second fight in a few months, why wouldn't you be focusing on prepping for that fight, knowing this fight doesn't really matter? Call it a bad take if you want, but I have a hard time believing that the fact that it's a draw, it just happens to be coincidence.
I did my time, and I want out.
It's no secret that people have been naming inanimate objects for many a moon, but a lot of the time it's a joke, and some people just take it way too far.
Nathaniel is in a committed relationship with a car that he's named Chase.
I drove 3,000 miles to visit Bruce.
My name is Bruce.
Now, this was mostly just a fun thread that I wanted to put in here because it's a fun thread, but unfortunately there wasn't really much on Twitter to look at, so I'm very sorry about this, but it's time for a Reddit reaction. Look, where else did you want me to go? It's Reddit. It's kind of like the go-to for this kind of thing. Twitter didn't supply the necessary materials, so I acquired them. Moral of the story is, you're strange. Stop it. This story involves yours truly. My dad's real proud. I made it onto my own show twice. So a YouTuber named Jonathan Pine News showed up on my feed the other day. Don't know why. My no sub. Probably one of these people's fault. He quote tweeted, "As a man, it's not up to me to tell a woman what/what not to wear, but to support and work towards equality. I can empathize and I can listen and I can understand. To dismiss this possibility is not helpful for anyone." Jonathan Pine said himself, "You're also allowed to express your opinion. Don't let anyone tell you you can't, especially because of your gender. It's regressive. Bullcrap wrapped up to look like liberalism." A user named Sarah said, "Men spend too much of their time expressing opinions on what they think women should wear or how they look. So they can have their opinions, but in this situation, it's less valid than the women who are affected." A user named Paul responded, "My wife spends a lot of time telling me what I should be wearing. Perhaps someone suitably woke could educate her why this is inappropriate." Sarah said, "Tell her yourself." I replied, "But then he'd be mansplaining." And oh boy, did I piss some people off. I got two quote tweets. One from Sarah, mentioned earlier. "You don't know what mansplaining is, do you?" I merely responded, "Condescending explanation from a man to a woman. For instance, a man telling a woman how she should talk to him as she suggested the man do?
Bum 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 ba 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 bum ba da ba da ba.
No response at all. But I'm guessing that's because she probably muted me. Muting is the new block, and I'm not blocked. Kind of hard to call somebody out for muting you when there's no proof of it. Either way, I would have loved to hear how I was wrong about that statement, given that there's no actual definition, but there is a profile on Merriam-Webster's.com. If you're not familiar with Merriam-Webster's, it's kind of the golden standard in the United States for the dictionary. So when a word hasn't been around long enough necessarily to be put in the dictionary, they will still kind of build a profile for the word so that there's a history and an understanding of what the purpose is of the word prior to a definition being solidified. Mansplaining is at its core a very specific thing. It's what occurs when a man talks condescendingly to someone, especially a woman, about something he has incomplete knowledge of with the mistaken assumption that he knows more about it than the person he's talking to does. I'd say that pretty accurately fits what I said. And the other quote tweet was pretty much a straight up lie just to kind of make me look stupid. I never said what mansplaining was. I merely pointed out that what she said for him to do would be mansplaining. I love that they mentioned the irony that they're howling from when what they're doing is condescendingly making fun of me for explaining what mansplaining is. Condescendingly. And they're not even right. This was then followed by a series of nonsense jokes that were basically just insults. At a certain point, I left it alone because I realized I wasn't going to get anywhere no matter how I treated the situation. Just out of morbid curiosity, a little while after this all happened, I went and checked their account to see what they had tweeted directly recently. And yeah, one of their tweets was something along the lines of just jokes on this account. I think you need to learn what jokes are. By the way, I think it's hilarious that they both quote tweeted me within seconds of my original post, since both of them are assuming that I'm a natural male, since they both are assuming I don't know what mansplaining is, and that's rich coming from a white male. So they both assumed that I was a natural male, making fun of the concept of mansplaining, since they didn't have time to look into my account to see that I'm an actual male, because they wouldn't be able to just tell by a picture, right? I just love the fact that they assumed my gender and then called me out for not knowing what mansplaining is by quote tweeting me to their own feeds. I'm not even the one who was being condescending.
Now there's only emptiness, but I'm missing something. I think we're good, I'm not the only one.
Believe it or not, this last topic might be even more split opinion between the people watching this video than any of the other topics. Over the last somewhere around a decade, it's believed, the billionaires in China have been paying to have their historical art stolen back from other countries. According to the article, this was stuff being stolen from museums that were housing them. Specifically in this story, the Zodiac heads. Now, the reason they claim it's okay that they stole them back is that they were stolen during a time of war. According to the article, this was done because China still owned them. They were stolen during a time of war, and they're really just kind of stealing back what's already theirs. That's the story they're going with anyway. Even though apparently the reason the conflict happened that they were stolen during in the first place was because the Chinese government captured, tortured, and killed the British negotiators that were meeting with them to negotiate. The foreign soldiers took the heads and burned the buildings to the ground as a response to the torture and killing of their soldiers. That's, again, according to the article anyway. But that's not what my series is about. Not about articles. It's about Twitter. This, for me, is the ridiculous blind praise that China is getting for stealing items that were taken over 150 years ago. Almost 2 centuries ago, if you round up 50 years. Even though they are now one of, if not the most powerful country on the planet. Ironically, I guess they're still against negotiating. But they're a superpower that's not against stealing from other governments rather than negotiating. In the US, we're going to treat them like minorities, stealing their history back from their oppressors. But this is China. They're not an oppressed minority there. But, you know, stealing isn't what they're doing because the Europeans had no right to take them, whether it was in retaliation during a time of war or not. I mean, I'm sure China never took anything from anybody during a time of war that they didn't give back, right? You're openly supporting theft from museums. These were being stored in museums, where one could assume that they're learning about the historical value of these items, being able to actually observe the item themselves. Whereas when they were stolen before, it was a time of war, and it was in retaliation to allegedly a much greater act of war. You know, the murder and torture of a bunch of their soldiers. Now that's just theft. 2 wrongs don't make a right. And by my count, there's actually 3 wrongs here, which still doesn't make a right. You tortured and killed the European negotiators. The Europeans retaliated and stole your heads, and then you stole them back. That That makes you just did the last theft. That's all you did. Now I get one of your history back, especially given the well-known weight that Asian cultures tend to put on you know, their history and their artifacts and the stereotypical honor. To whatever degree China puts weight in these things, I could understand to an extent wanting to get these items back, but I feel like this is definitely the wrong way to go about it because it's still theft. And in this day and age, realistically, you would hope that civility would be the way to handle things. Apparently not. So many people are just approving of organized theft ring being started by one of, if not the most powerful country on the planet. It's really frustrating to me that they're not seeing this as an abuse of power. Hey, we're already the most powerful country on the planet. Let's just steal the things we want. You know, that doesn't sound like they think they can just kind of do whatever they want and get away with it. All right, is that it, Tom? I miss anything else?
No, that's good enough.
All right, you take care of the outro. I'm gonna go take a dump in the neighbor's sandbox and blame it on their cat.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Remember to like it if you liked it and let us know down below what you thought. Have a nice day. I wanna watch this channel burn to the ground in a fiery ball, while Jake weeps loudly at the ruin of his creation. He will regret bringing me into his hell. I am now lord of it. He will suffer slowly and painfully as I dissect his creation.